This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for listening, guys. We've got a jam-packed show for you guys today as SMU continues to stay hot on the transfer portal front with 2 more commitments coming in since we last spoke. But, guys, before we get into that, I've got to tell you, subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com today. It's just $54.99 for an entire year. That's our signing day sale that we've got rolling right now. You will want to have said that you jumped on this sale. So do that. Tell your friends. We appreciate all of you guys who have jumped in. This is a historic month already for ontheponyexpress.com in terms of subscribers joining the site. So people are amped about the ACC. People are amped about transfer portal, all those things. So join today and get you covered all the way through next season in the ACC and into next year's transfer portal window too. So sign up today. Let's begin with news that SMU landed Miami defensive end Jafari Harvey. And I say Jafari, and some people who are listening to the pod might say, what happened? I thought it was Jafari. I did confirm over the weekend that he goes by Jafari. So that is something for you guys to know. You could share it with your friends as you're talking by the water cooler that, hey, that new defensive end, it's Jafari Harvey. So that's what he's called in this household, and that's what he'll go by. SMU will get Jafari for 1 year of college football, and it's going to be an important one for SMU as they go into the ACC and needed to add some size. Well, with the 2 words, just all in, he announced his decision on social media on Friday. 6'4", 251. He joins guys like Jalen Knight and Romello Brinson, Keyshawn Smith, Elijah Roberts, and Jordan Miller as former Hurricanes who have now come to Dallas. In 5 seasons with the Hurricanes, he had 97 tackles. 21 and a half tackles for loss, and 10 sacks. This is a super productive young man who's going to play his final year of college football at SMU, and he will solidify that bandit linebacker position for SMU. They lost Nelson Paul, who played a lot of good football for SMU for many, many years, but now they bring in Jafari, who certainly adds some height and length to that position that has guys like Cam Robertson and Isaiah Smith playing really well, especially towards the end of last season. Both of those guys were big contributors. You also have Jalen Samuels, who was playing behind Elijah Roberts. So maybe you can move him around a little bit more, or Jafari can maybe blow up and play behind Elijah Roberts. But either way, the expectation is for him to play a lot in some role on this defense, and he's just another big body with size that SMU's really addressed that well. They brought in, for the most part, guys that have size and athleticism. So kudos to them on this land. 2 years ago in 2022, he had 7.5 tackles for loss and I want to say 5.5 sacks. So if they can get that version of Jafari Harvey, that would be big news for SMU because who knows what's going on with Miami in terms of why guys aren't panning out here and there and things like that. But to see him regress in year, I think 2 under Mario Cristobal, he decided to find a place that could maybe resurrect his career. So he goes to a fellow ACC school in SMU now to finish things out. And SMU is pretty happy about this one. I can tell you that much, guys. This is a big pickup for them in the grand scheme of things to, again, address the defensive line position. He was a former 4-star recruit out of Vero Beach High School, where Tyler Aronson, the SMU quarterback commit, attends. And so that was a big deal for SMU to get him on board and again, address a position that I think has a lot of young talent with guys like Cam Robertson and Isaiah Smith. But before you know it, guys, they're going to be, out the door. I mean, both are already juniors, which is crazy. And so at some point in the future, SMU is going to have to address that position a little bit more in terms of the younger guys that they bring in. But that will be a conversation for a different day. And hey, if they push the chips in, which they are, on being as competitive as they can be when it comes to the transfer portal, or being as competitive as they can be with regards to the ACC, which they are right now. That's really important, that SMU can maybe go out and find somebody who's young or capitalize off it in high school recruiting in the 2025 class and bring somebody in, because you'll have one more year with a guy like Isaiah Smith and Cam Robertson if all goes well. And you can always bring in another guy for the 2025 season. But the defensive line is starting to get a little top heavy. They will have to, knock some things out of the park in regards to defensive line and edge prospects in the 2025 class. It's kind of a must in a way, depending on how things go here with portal defensive line recruiting and things like that. So um, before we get to the second commitment, who's a big dude, literally and physically, I got to tell you guys about our friends at Game Time. And for those of you who are going to SMU Boston College, the weather is starting to look pretty good for this one, but it's also important that you guys get the best ticket deal that you can possibly get. And that's why we have our friends at Game Time. They have the Game Time guarantee, which means if you find tickets in the same row and section for less, you can then get 110% of the difference credited to you. That's the Game Time guarantee. And so as you go through this process, and it's kind of a interesting stadium setup, you're going to want to work with the best. And that's why we partner with Game Time, to take the frustration out of that ticket buying experience. If you download the Game Time app today and use the code PONY, that gets you $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. So we're looking at the website here. You can go gametime.co if you're on your computer, or you can use the Game Time app, which takes just 2 clicks to find your tickets. Select the game, pick a seat, click buy, use your Apple Pay, use whatever. I've done it with a slew of different events, whether we went to a comedy show, we've bought tickets to Cowboys game before, we've done it all with the Game Time app. So Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you that complete peace of mind with your purchase. So download Game Time today. Terms do apply, but create that account and use the code PONY, PONY, for $20 off. Game Time is that place for last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So appreciate our friends at Game Time as always for supporting the On the Pony Express podcast, and all of you guys who have jumped on with Game Time. They've been good partners for us. So SMU did reel in another defensive line commit, and this was a big one, literally and figuratively. And the man is Mike Lockhart out of West Virginia, who comes over to SMU for his final season of college football. And I can tell you, I talked with Mike when he made the decision, and he's just really excited. Him and his fiance are moving to Dallas, and in that process, getting ready for Mike to enroll for the spring. And he brings in his 6'3", 308-pound frame as well, and he's going to be able to anchor the middle of the defense for SMU. And this is so important, and we know why. Jordan Miller's out the door, which congratulations, Jordan Miller, for bringing that East-West Shrine game invitation to practice on Saturday. He got it offered and accepted that invitation, so he'll be competing in that once his college career wraps up in the Fenway Bowl. But Mike Lockhart started out his career at Georgia Tech. He then went to West Virginia and just finished up his second season there. And he's somebody that has made a big impact, for that West Virginia Mountaineers defense. This past season, he played in 12 games. He made 21 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, and 2.5 sacks. And to compare this edition, here's what Jordan Miller did this year for SMU. And, Rhett Lashley said it in the video when talking about him ahead of him being awarded the East-West Shrine game invitation, is that guys don't always have to make a ton of tackles. They don't have to make a big difference on the stat sheet, but they needed somebody to hold it down. And so let me show you guys this. Jordan Miller in 2022 from Miami. So think about Mike Lockhart coming from West Virginia, entering SMU, going into ACC. Jordan Miller had 18 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and a sack. This year for SMU, Jordan Miller had 24 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and a half sack. So Mike Lockhart, I mean, talk about a guy that has a chance to really shake things up for SMU, because you look at those numbers, and I know numbers are kind of hard sometimes to translate, but in terms in terms of disruptive plays, that is just massive for SMU to be able to rely on him. And oh, by the way, he did block the game-winning field goal attempt by TCU at the end of that one this fall. So SMU fans are going to like him a lot. He's played 5 years of college football. He has 61 career tackles, 13 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. He's from Birmingham, Alabama. SMU did beat out programs like Boston College, Washington, and Colorado. He actually committed to SMU on his visit, then went to Colorado, and still committed after that. So while Dion did beat out SMU and Quinn Barnes, the big defensive lineman from Alabama, SMU gets a more proven guy in Mike Lockhart. I mean, just statistically, they get an older guy. They get somebody who can certainly hold things down in the middle. And now that brings us to 3 of the 4 commitments for SMU from the transfer portal being defensive linemen, which is big news for SMU. We knew that was a point of emphasis for them, and they've gone out and addressed it very well. So what's next for SMU on the defensive line? Well, they have options. Like I mentioned, and Quinn Barnes did commit to Colorado after his official visit, and Aeneas Peebles from Duke, who SMU hosted, did commit to Virginia Tech. Kind of felt like SMU's not necessarily outside looking in. I felt like they had a shot, a little bit better compared to maybe some of these other programs that were ultimately among the finalists. But they did not pick up either one of those guys, which is what it is. It's a part of the recruiting process when it comes to transfers. But SMU is battling for another big defensive lineman. But before I talk about him, one guy that is certainly on the radar for SMU is Ohio State defensive line transfer Amari Abor, a Duncanville product who was able to take in Duncanville winning a state championship this week. This weekend, he was in attendance there at AT&T Stadium watching the Panthers win a second straight state championship, which was always cool to see. When it comes to Omari Abor, I still feel like SMU sits in a great spot there. I think that one could be wrapped up somewhat soon, but you never know with kind of timing on this type of stuff from the transfer portal. But the Mustangs are certainly in the mix for him, and I would call them the heavy favorite at this point. Another player on the defensive line, though, that could make an even bigger impact is a multi-time transfer. SMU is battling Anthony Booker from Arkansas, who transferred there from Maryland. And the Mustangs did host him for an official visit. And if you're sitting there on YouTube watching the show on YouTube, you can see his transfer portal RPM there. Well, it is supposed to be a little bit more 50-50, which I would call it a 50-50 coin flip at this point, whether he goes to SMU or Baylor. He took official visits to both schools, but he is about 6'4", 351 pounds. So a massive human, a guy who, look, when Dave Aranda, and I'm very familiar with Dave Aranda, Dennis Johnson, who's recruiting him over there at Baylor, very familiar with them from my days covering LSU. They need a guy like him as well. And specifically, I mean, they really need a nose tackle. And they are very much desperate in Waco to turn things around. Whereas SMU, we saw this season what a Jordan Miller can do. If you can get a guy like Anthony Tank Booker in there, that would allow Mike Lockhart to maybe play a little bit more defensive tackle, but also allow him to play a little bit more, a little bit less, spell him a little bit more. Or you can take Tank Booker off the field, play Jonathan Jefferson, Mike Lockhart, some of these other guys, and you can just mix things around. When you have the biggest of humans you can possibly find in Tank Booker, and then go out and have a really large human, Mike Lockhart, and then Jonathan Jefferson, Corey Roberson. You've got options here, and that's what SMU needed to go and get. And then on the edges, you're set. I mean, those edge positions for SMU. Like Florida State. I don't know who they have coming behind Jared Verse. I'd have to dive in. I'm going to turn our attention here in 2024 to ACC early previews and things like that. But when you have those guys on the edges, you just got to find a few options at the defensive tackle position. And so that's what SMU is hoping to do. They are really, really close to doing that. If they can reel in Tank Booker, I would think they're done with those defensive tackles in the middle for SMU. So we're watching Tank Booker. A little bit of background on him. He was somebody that was at Arkansas and just couldn't break into the starting lineup, but transferred there from Maryland ahead of last season. In 41 career games, he has 2.5 sacks and 10.5 tackles for loss. He's got 2 forced fumbles. He just has been a depth guy. But if you're looking at a depth guy in the SEC and you're looking at a depth guy in the Big Ten, count me in, especially for 1 year. So we'll be monitoring him. He would be a massive addition for many reasons for SMU. We talked a lot about SMU's recruiting efforts in the transfer portal and what the needs are and what SMU needs to go out and acquire. And SMU's done that. They've locked up the receiver position. They have been able to reel in Ashton Cozart, which we talked about on the last podcast. But now they need to reel in some offensive linemen. The running back position is set with Derek McFall sticking with the Mustangs in the class of 2024. And then, of course, the quarterback position with Tyler Aronson coming in to replace Alex Padilla's scholarship. Tight end is one we're watching as well, but nothing's really come of it too much yet. But SMU had Savion Byrd on campus for an official visit, and they had Nate Anderson, his teammate at Oklahoma, on campus for official visits this weekend. And both of these guys are players who have played in a number of games for the Sooners. Neither one has really established themselves as key starters. And look, Oklahoma's seen a mass exodus on the offensive line, but SMU really needs to find a way to get these guys on board. And I expect them to at some point. So that would make 3 more transfer portal commits. If you're talking about Omari Abor, if you're talking about Nate Anderson, and you're talking about Savion Byrd. There was a couple of other transfer portal players on campus this past weekend that we have let you guys know about at ontheponyexpress.com. I guess there was only one, but we had updates on multiple guys at ontheponyexpress.com. So be sure to check that out. Again, just another reason to subscribe. You can try us for a month, but really the deal is to just jump on board for $50, $55 for a year right now. Again, that signing day sale won't be around long. For SMU, I think now you look at the cornerback position as being a position they really like to address. The linebacker room is in a really good spot. And we'll talk about kind of the future of that room here a little bit later on in the podcast. But they have been able to bring in a couple guys for official visits from the cornerback spot. But the one name that is emerging is the one that we've talked about it on the ponyexpress.com. So check us out there. It's still a room that is kind of, you're waiting to see what happens because SMU feels really, really good about Jalen Davis Robinson. They think he's going to be a star. And I agree with them. I think he's got great speed. He's developed really well this year as a young corner. Corner is a position I kind of equate, and you guys, for the most part, if you're longtime listeners, know that I'm a hockey guy. And if you're an NHL team and you draft a defenseman, the rule of thumb is it takes around 200 games for that defenseman, if they're going to pan out, to take that next step to that level. So if you're a Stars fan, Klingberg didn't take that next step. He's just been a power play guy. He didn't take the next step defensively. He's, is what he is at this point. Whereas the first about 180 games of Victor Hedman's career for my Tampa Bay Lightning, he was one of the most frustrating players to watch. It would just absolutely, I mean, we were just like, can't believe it. Top pick, I think he was number 2 overall. We're like, we got the lemon of the draft. I mean, this guy turns it over, this, does that. Well, he's going to go in the Hall of Fame, might end up being one of the best defensemen ever. He probably is. But corners are kind of similar. And I remember Jordan Wyatt coming along. I remember, Brandon Stevens coming along, and it just takes so many reps. And Jalen Davis Robinson didn't get any reps at LSU in game. So he had no experience coming here to SMU. And it's important that this year he got to sit and learn behind Charles Woods, who's an absolute fixer for this defense. They're going to miss him a lot. And sit behind Chris Megginson, who I know he got targeted more because of Charles Woods. And so some people were kind of like, but solid for SMU for what he was, solid. Now this is Jalen Davis Robinson's time to step up to the next level. And so they like him a lot. They have Jahfari Rogers coming back. They have Kavaris Hall. They have AJ Davis. They have Keyshawn Mills. They have 2 freshman corners coming in Alex Rogers and Speedy Nettles. This is all very important, but they need to go out and get one solid veteran cornerback. So if SMU can do that, this whole situation is going to be in a lot better shape. But if they can't, it's going to be one of those positions where SMU might have to just kind of, roll with the punches a little bit this season. But that's why it is so important that they can finish out the defensive line and the linebacker room. Like, let's look at where the linebacker room is now that we know what we know about this group versus where it was last year. And if you're at ontheponyexpress.com and if you're a supporter of Pony Sports DTX and you were able to come to our event at Ozona a couple weeks ago, Kobe Wilson was one of the players that was there. And he made mention of, how motivating it was. Some people were talking about the linebackers, probably me included, the way they were, which was, I always said the linebackers on paper, there was a lot of questions. Guys that hadn't emerged, the only one we were kind of sure about was Ahmad Walker. And, Kobe Wilson played a lot for Temple, but hadn't taken that next step. Alex Kilroy was a true freshman. Brandon Maizona was a true freshman. Jaquandis Burns hadn't taken that next step. Chris Adamore was moving down from safety. There were so many questions. Now that group is at least, I mean, you're looking at one of the best groups on the team. I mean, Kobe Wilson, how well he played down the stretch, Ahmad Walker, Alex Kilgore's upside and future, and then you're going to bring in Brandon Booker and Zach Smith. If they bring in a veteran linebacker for that group, that's going to be a really, really fun group to watch. So all that being said, this is one of those years that if SMU can't find a way to get a corner, which I think they will, Ricky Hunley is very, very good recruiter. I think they end up with a guy who has started some games at some serious programs as their corner in this class. But if they don't, then they just need the rest of the defense to step up. And I know I say that and make it sound easy, but when you have the depth that they have coming back at safety, when you have that type of talent, you've got to be able to find a way to, kind of shield some of the things that they are going to maybe go through if they don't get a corner. So we're watching the cornerback spot. We think they're going to also address with the linebacker position. And I tell you guys what, we just continue to just track the transfer portal. If you don't follow the transfer portal on Twitter, that is On3's Twitter account for the transfer portal. It just goes off every few minutes on my phone, so I keep following it. But it's at transfer portal with an underscore at the end. So transfer portal underscore is the account to follow. Throw it on alerts. I know some of you do because you guys see somebody enter or you see somebody commit and you run right to the board and ask about them. So, which I love. I think our community is great at doing that. And it's been a lot of fun to follow the transfer portal for that reason. So, guys, want to continue to remind you guys ahead of Christmas that you guys have to check out our friends at Red and West. They have a 25% off sale going on right now on the SMU gear at redandwest.com. You can get that red polo right in time for Christmas. They also have the white polo as well. which is really, really sharp. I like that one. I think it's really clean looking. And again, you need to be on the lookout for Red and West to expand their run of apparel on the SMU side of things rather soon in 2024. It's going to be a fun ride for Mustang fans to see that company expand, because I've seen their stuff when it comes to other college teams, especially Oklahoma, which is what they started in that situation, or in that um, market. And so they've been able to make a big statement with their gear. It breathes really, really well. And so they've been able to, you know, really start off strong in the SMU market. You see some of the sizes sold out on the white polo there. So love the breathability, love the look. It's change up from others that are out there. I saw some people wearing it in the AAC championship and around New Orleans. So check them out, redandwest.com. The early signing period does begin Wednesday. It runs until Friday. And for SMU, their class is pretty much done. And we talked about Derek McFall last podcast. We talked about how he held his signing day ceremony. Well, shortly before this podcast, I got back from Red Oak, Texas, where I was seeing Zach Smith, the SMU linebacker, who did put pen to paper with the Mustangs unofficially, of course. He'll be sending in his letter of intent pretty early on during the early signing period. And the Mustangs will be ready for that one to hit their inbox for sure, as he's somebody that this staff has really prioritized early on. They were all over him throughout the process, battling multiple programs for commitment from him. And he, sure enough, he jumped on board. He's going to enroll in January. So look out for the entire or look out for more coverage on him and a full story at ontheponyexpress.com. But I did leave Red Oak this morning and got a chance to spend some time with Zach Smith. His whole family's there. Karen and Ricky, his parents are so excited that he's going to be staying home to play for SMU. Red Oak's been pretty vocal about what they think about SMU, and a lot of it is very positive for the Mustangs. So when it comes to the early signing period and what to expect, as we run down the commitments, they're all expected to sign. I haven't heard of anybody that's not. Derek McFall already held his ceremony. Kadavian Dodson-Walker, who just won a state championship on Saturday, he had the game-sealing interception for the Panthers, which was a really cool moment. We have our story up with KDOT on the site, and you can find that there. But he capped off a really nice senior year. I was really impressed with Kadavian. He's just somebody that has to get into the weight room and just eat and get stronger and add mass to his frame. I've always said that he's just somebody that needs a weight room and a training table, very much so. So once he does that and kind of bulks up, I'm really excited about what he's going to be for this team. And he was all around the football. I think he finished third on the team in tackles for the state championship game. So really good player there. And then Brandon Booker out of DeSoto finished off his high school career with it's kind of a weird play. He had a bunch of tackles in the game for DeSoto, which absolutely just crushed Summer Creek, 74-14. I think they set a new state record for points, and they set a margin of victory, I think, as well. Just a dominating performance by DeSoto's won back-to-back state championships. Good old Claude Mathis over there has it rolling. But Brandon Booker, I talked with him after the game. Just that picture, if you're watching on our YouTube channel, which if you're not, just follow us at ontheponyexpress.com and check out our YouTube channel. There's info on the site about it. But that picture is from about 2 springs ago, and that was the one I took. That was his first profile picture. So he looks a little bit more filled out now, older, and 2 state title rings, heavier, I guess, if you want to say. So he finished with a kind of DeSoto blocked a punt. One of their players recovered it. I forget who it was. And he actually had the wherewithal to pitch to Brandon Booker, who ran it in. And Claude Mathis was caught on the big screen, just kind of smiling and shaking his head because it was kind of an unbelievable play. But Claude also realized the route was truly on there. Speedy Nettles is going to sign as well with the Mustangs on during the early signing period. He was the late flip. So SMU is able to address the outside cornerback spot with Speedy out of Dallas Christian, who just won a state championship. So they'll get Booker, and he'll put pen to paper on Wednesday as well. Big news there for SMU, but they're not done. They're going to pick up King Large on the offensive line. They're going to pick up Jalen Moses, another local defensive back. Tyler Aronson, the quarterback in the class, will put pen to paper as well at Vero Beach. He'll enroll early in January. Alex Rogers from Cedar Hill. And of course, we talked about Zach Smith and then Graham Uter from Bayside Academy in Alabama. He's going to be somebody that SMU brings in as well. So this transfer class that'll complement this high school class is going to be very important for what's next for SMU with the ACC. The Mustangs did keep it relatively light on high school players overall. They have 10 commits from the high school ranks, and I don't expect any surprises at this point. It was funny, kind of funny. Jaden Milner-Jones won a state championship at DeSoto, and I saw him on the field and talked to him and interviewed him. And I know Craig Niver ended up leaving SMU right after that, but was all set to sign and was there in SMU gear, and his folks invited me and all of that. And then all of a sudden, boom, he was committed to Colorado. So at least I didn't go to that one. But Brandon Booker seems a lot more locked in with the Mustangs. So that'll be it officially for SMU in the class of 2024. I think this is, with transfers, going to be a class that could probably reach around, I would say, 20. That would mean 6 more transfers. So if they can add another defensive lineman, or 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, it could probably reach 22, if we're being honest, 20 to 22. So 12 transfers. If you can land Tank Booker, if you can land Amari Abor, which I expect them to land Amari, that's 2. Then you've got Savion Bird and Nate Anderson, that's 4. If you can find a tight end, that'd be 5. That puts you at 19. And then I think I mentioned a corner, defensive lineman, then a corner. That'd be 20 right there. So then a linebacker would be 21. So we'll see kind of how things go for SMU the rest of the way, but we'll have full coverage at ontheponyexpress.com of the early signing period. So be sure to check out that. Again, just another reason to subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com for all the latest when it comes to the Mustangs and their recruiting efforts. And bowl practices start on Tuesday, so we'll be back on that grind as well. But guys, I do got to tell you guys real quick about our friends at biggameusa.com. It is Christmas time around here, and you get free shipping on orders over $100. And that's why you also need the promo code BEON3 to get a discount off of the official game ball for SMU. It's a great Christmas gift. You can go to biggameusa.com and use promo code BEON3 for 10% off your order. So check that out today. Again, this is the official game ball of the Mustangs. Preston Stone, Kevin Jennings all worked on this and getting it together right there with this group in Addison. And that 10% off would be BEON3. You can use it for all sorts of footballs on their website. So check them out, biggameusa.com. Wanted to close with a few thoughts from state championships. I've talked about the 2024 commits that were in the game, but let's look ahead to 2025 and beyond. Really 2025 for the most part. And SMU did have 2 prospects in state championship game, one of the early games against Anna. Anna was able to pull away and make this one a really tough one for Chapel Hill to overcome. But Ricky Stewart and Demetrius Brisbane playing in their first game since Keenan Hall had left. SMU was on hand all weekend at AT&T Stadium watching pretty much all their commits and targets. And Demetrius Brisbane kind of had a rough go. Ricky Stewart, the running back, was able to get some yards on the ground and kind of keep things rolling here and there. But overall, a tough one for Chapel Hill as they fell 26-0. So a tough game for Chapel Hill to end on. But the Mustangs had other prospects, of course, in the state title games. They did have Duncanville quarterback Keelan Russell on the field, of course. He was able to have a strong state championship game in his final game of his junior year, solidifying him as one of the top quarterbacks in the state of Texas. And I thought he was pretty solid. He showed his ability to get the ball out of his hands quick. He had some pressure. I felt like North Shore blitzed him a ton. He also had a couple drops there. You'll see him. But if you're watching on YouTube, here's some of the clips. But he does a really nice job of dropping it off to some of his playmakers and also finding some guys down the field for big plays. So he has one of the more natural arms as far as arm talent that I've seen in this cycle. He has a really quick release, which I think is awesome for him. One thing I guess is I don't know if we've talked. Maybe we have, maybe we haven't. I guess Johnny Brewer did offer him after going to Duke. So SMU will have to contend with the Blue Devils a little bit, which is kind of a tough sell to go all the way out to the East Coast to play for another ACC team that, again, will kind of be rebuilding with the new coaching staff there. But Rhett Lashley has been key in this, and Ricky Hunley and those guys that Scott Natty, Tyler Foster, Danny West, so many have been key in keeping Keelan Russell happy. And the expectation is he's going to stay committed. He was really happy to play in front of his coaches on Saturday and win a state title, and made some big time throws in the process of getting there. So again, he faced a lot of pressure. North Shore kind of dialed it up quite a bit, and Duncanville's offensive line is good. It's okay. But he was able to, make things happen for Duncanville in that game, and SMU's hoping that he'll be able to do the same for them as he becomes a Mustang in the future. So we'll be monitoring him really close. Javion Holiday, the Duncanville defensive back that SMU has committed as well, did play in that game. He's somebody that the staff was out there watching at corner. He kind of got rotated in a good bit, but had some impact in the game at a certain point as well. So he stepped up. And then the guy that stepped up the most out of all these guys, honestly, was the late game. If you were there on Saturday night watching DeSoto, you saw Dalen Singleton put on an absolute show. 3 touchdowns, 150 yards receiving. He was just awesome. And I think he's somebody that has shown now that he needs a little bit more respect, kind of looking at us, honestly. I know he is small, but I just felt like he was so explosive. And, when you can beat man coverage like he can and create explosive opportunities, that's big. So he's going to be a battle. There are some schools that have entered the mix and all of those things. But again, SMU is working to keep him committed, and he'll have plenty of others calling his way after that dominant showing in AT&T Stadium. So lots more coverage to come on state championships and full recruiting reactions and things like that. But wanted to let you guys know some of those quick notes for you guys as we wrap up the podcast. With that, guys, hope you guys have a great rest of the week. We'll have another podcast for you guys to rock with later this week. But the Mustangs continue to have a solid run in the transfer portal. Not as explosive necessarily from the start as it was last year. They were under that time crunch. They also got a week later start this year, but they are rolling right now in the transfer portal still. So we'll be tracking it all at ontheponyexpress.com. We hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Subscribe wherever you find us, and we'll catch you next time with another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast.